So I just made like 2 videos of me going through my phone and just finding funny business things changing on their own. I just wanted to make this video about answering Ryan's question. And all my settings are turned off again. I went to sleep, but supposed to go get that damn Epicenter, but I fell asleep, so I just woke up. But anyways, I just wanted to add that. I don't know if you guys saw the 2 videos I posted up of what I'm calling fumbling through my phone and finding funny business, which is going to be a series because I do it all the time. It's kind of funny. Usually it's just kind of like me being satirical and amusing while maybe finding something, but probably not. But I think today I found some definite things that are not very transparent to the end user. And I think what these videos are going to do more of is show how I'm not an incompetent user. I'm not a pro user of technology, but I represent probably a larger cross section of the types of people that are having the same issues that I am. Who have some capabilities to use their technology, but maybe they're messing with settings they shouldn't. But the thing is that's now that we're in a privacy centric and security focused state, a lot more people are starting to mess around with these settings. So they need to make that more transparent. They need to make it obvious that change system settings is nothing to be afraid of by changing its name to something else, because change system settings just sounds like the most important of the permissions, but they think camera is or microphone is. The Google hails those as the most security centric things. Well, change system settings allows any app to undo any setting that you change. Why isn't a lot more focus being put there? So anyways, that's the purpose of those videos. I was just going to show, I'll probably make this one like a small one that is private. Nah, I guess I'll post it up. Who gives a shit? So audio control, this is my 4-channel mid and tweed amp. It has a pass-through. So, or that might be a 4-channel input. We'll figure it out. But at any rate, yeah, what I'm going to do is audio control does this thing where usually in a head unit, you're going to have 1 volt, 2 volts, 2.5 volt is the output from the RCA cables. So when you're using a car stereo, your RCA cable is going to be a low voltage. It's called low level in. So like when you're going from a head unit to an amplifier, sometimes you can run the speaker wire outputs. So that's called a high level in, because it's your head unit can either send a signal via an RCA cable. So the RCA cables, right? That's called low level. What that does is that converts the audio signal into a low voltage, right? But if you notice that there's those 3 big ones are your power, ground, and a remote, right? The remote's really fucking big too. You don't need that's a fucking huge remote in the middle. Now you see those and those. Well, those are the outputs. Those are like the amplifier does its job. It takes the low level in and puts out amplified power to a speaker. So why is there another set? Well, that's called a high level in. So what that does is these amps and the audio controls history is built on 2 things. The Epicenter, which was their most popular product ever, and that was back in the 80s and 90s. And what it does is it's called bass restoration. But it doesn't just restore the bass restoration. What they say is that during the recording process, because end users are going to listen to their music and they're always going to just it's like people that put salt on their food before they taste it. They're not going to listen to the music and say, let's see here. Well, the bass is mostly adequate, but it seems to be missing some frequency. We're just going to give it a little bit of a boost to bring it into balance. And the mid-range frequencies are great. We don't need any more boost there. People go into their cars and they fucking turn it up. So most music these days is produced with the end user's ignorance of the recording process in mind. So they take a perfect recording curve in the studio and they always back it off. It's kind of like this industry thing where they expect the end user to not listen and to immediately adjust their EQ settings. And so with the recordings, and it's just kind of an industry standard, is they cut off the headroom. So it's like instead of recording to 0 decibels, which zero is the in a recording like a wave frequency goes like this, right? It goes woo, woo, woo. What usually you do in recording is when you're mastering your track, you do what's called a normalize to 0. Well, -2 decibels is usually kind of like -2, -4. Different recording agencies do it differently, but you record it instead of to the 0 ceiling, which represents no distortion, and anything above 0 decibels is distortion. But that's not exactly right. But for the sake of explaining this, that's basically what's going on. So they chop off a bunch of the headroom, so that the top of your recording is some of the, not just all bass frequencies get affected by this, because bass is in full range signal, which is what one of these is going to be doing. The amplifier that controls the mids and tweets needs to basically receive full range signal. And then, even though I'm going to be passing it through a crossover en route, that full range signal then is going to have, across all of the frequency range, more frequencies replaced by the epicenter. So what that's going to experience in the car is you're going to get it's going to basically, every speaker in that system is suddenly going to sound more full. And if it's a bass specific speaker, it's going to sound a lot more full. So for me, because I don't have a lot of space and I'm trying to maximize the amount of sound that this vehicle is capable of putting out on a budget, because there's still another audio control piece that I need. It's called the 3.2, and it's a in-dash preamp. Now that I'm getting this, well, hopefully I didn't lose it because I fell asleep. So, the idea of the system is I want everything to be doing more work than is normally expected of it, in such a way that I maximize it. Car audio is historic. It's just extremely inefficient because they have enough power from the 12-volt system that a lot of car audio systems just aren't designed to maximize the electron as it travels from your source to your ears. So you put a CD in the deck, you turn on the radio, you use your DJ controller, that electron starts there, and it goes in at a very low voltage. So my DJ controller is going to be putting out, well, who knows what my DJ controller is going to be putting out? That's a good question. But it's going to be going to the auxiliary in on the head unit, because my head unit has the ability for you to plug in a cell phone via a cord to its input. Well, instead, I'm going to be converting down that DJ controller's output into that same cord, a really good cord, but like right there to the input. So then the head unit is going to process the DJ controller as the audio source, and it's going to boost it to 4 volts. Because my head unit is a pretty good head unit in that it doesn't do the norm of 2 volts or 1 volt. So this 4 volts, which is your input, right? So this is when you're feeding an amplifier a signal, you're sending it low level in, unless you don't have a head unit. Unless you for whatever reason you don't have RCAs and you need to use this. Usually this is for interfacing with a factory radio. That the high level in, what I showed you guys, that we have these strange ones right here. That's called high level in, and that's low level in. This is 4 volts. This is 400, up to 400 watts that it can take. So what this does is takes the head unit's audio output that go to the speakers, and it allows you to interface with a factory radio by sending the whatever the amplified portion of the sound, because that the RCAs usually convert inside the radio, and the radio puts out amplified speaker level power to your speakers. So this allows you to intercept that. Instead, your car radio sends out its high level, which is your speaker level, your 400 watts, where it's been changed into the end result before it hits the speaker. And then this thing takes that high level in, cleans up the sound, and puts out polished. So this allows you to interface with a car radio and put out sound as if you were using an RCA cable into one of these. So it's a conversion thing. So that's one thing that audio control is famous for, is their line level converters, is what that's called. So what I'm doing is every step of the way I'm trying to maximize the sound that is felt and heard outside the vehicle. Most car audio as well is inefficient in that you know, the sound's designed to be inside the car. Like, I'm not going to be opening up the doors and utilizing the car's mids and tweets outside, because I think the car is going to benefit by providing the augmented bass frequencies outside the vehicle. So, you know, if I open up the doors, I'm going to create a sloppy kind of departure of the sound from the car. My thoughts are just opening the sunroof. The sound wave is going to travel, and it's going to hit the windshield, which is kind of at an angle. And then, even though that's not the best direction for sound to change, it'll be guided up and out the moonroof. As opposed to opening the doors where the sound's going to hit this window, it's going to splash, and that's going to be kind of like a dissonant kind of sound change, wave change. And then it's like going out the doors and out the moonroof, or just out the doors. That's not the optimized use of that wave. This is just me guessing. I haven't done a sound test yet, but I've got years of car audio, so I think this has never been done before that I'm aware of, so I'm going to try this. At any rate, even if my big plan doesn't yield any massive results, it's going to also increase the sound outside just by nature of how I'm processing the sound going in. So I know I'm a little bit all over the place. Just stay with me. So the idea is that Epicenter is going to replace, within the main audio channel wave that's going to both the bass amp and going to the mid and tweet amp, which is this little tiny one here. Isn't that great? 4-channel. This is a 300 watt amp, this big. So this is really small. It mounts well. It's still an audio control. The big feature of audio control that I'm depending on is not that I'm not even using these. In fact, these are just going to come out. They're not even going to stay in the amp. I'm using audio control's boost frequency, and that's not what they call it, but audio control does this cool thing that not a lot of companies do, is some head units, like I said, they're 1 volt or they're 2 volts. Mine's 4 volts. The audio control line, every product in their line, and I have 4 of their products now, boosts your low level input frequency. And because audio control does this, they boost it, all of their amps and stuff receive an input voltage that is much higher than other amps. So what usually happens is that 4 volt head unit, let's say you have a good head unit like mine and you're putting out 4 volts. That 4 volts hits the input phase of this amp, and then the amp now has more than 1 volt and more than 3 volts. So think of like if you put into the thing, like an amplifier takes a little thing and makes it big. Well, if that little thing, instead of being 1 volts, is 4 volts, and you put it into that same amp, well, that out grows exponentially more. It isn't a linear thing. So because it's 3 more volts doesn't mean I get 3 more units in the output. No, what happens with an amplifier is, first off, when you feed a higher voltage input level, there's a lot more data that is contained in that audio stream. a lot more data. And you can max out at about 12 volts. And the way audio control works is each unit boosts that line level in even more. So I'm going to be able to get the inputs, so both the bass amp and this amp, and by nature of what I'm going to try, both of these, which I have 2 of now. And they look small, but the sound is fucking retarded. And since I'm trying to land JBL as one of my vendors, JBL does all the speakers in the car. The bass hub that's in the wheel well is a JBL. All the door speakers are JBL. So I'm going after JBL and Audio Control as 2 companies that I value in this process. And hopefully I'll earn some kind of a sponsorship, or they'll send me some free product, or if anything, some sort of an affiliate process with products that I like to use already. So what I'm going to try and help sell with audio control is the fact that the more audio control components that you use, you're able to maximize that input. So this is what's going to happen overall in the system. Because I'm maxing out what the amplifiers receive in before they put it out to the speakers. Maybe I can talk and do this at the same time. So audio control has this special process for what's called, when you're hooking things up, you've got to match the input voltage of an amplifier to the output voltage of the unit before it, and it's tuning. People think that you're just turning up the gain. You're not really turning up the output gain. What you're adjusting is the input gain. So you want the input gain to match the output gain of the stage before it. So if the 4-volt head unit goes into the Epicenter, and the Epicenter boosts things up to 7 or 8 volts, well, the Epicenter is going to need to be tuned to receive the 4 volts of the head unit so that its input stage is ready to receive 4 volts. And this is what's going to maximize everything. And now the Epicenter puts out 7 volts. So that output 7 volts needs to be matched to the input stage of the next, which is going to be the crossover, the 4XS by Audio Control. So I'm going to match the input stage of the crossover to receive the 7 volts that the Epicenter is putting out. Now that crossover is going to receive all of the Epicenter sound, and it's going to process, because I boosted its input frequency to the 7 volts of the Epicenter, and it's going to put out 8.5 volts to both of the other amps. So both of those other amps need to have their input stages tuned using, oh shit, this is going to be reversed. I got to remember to reverse this. Oh, it's going to be backwards on you guys. Fuck. Well, anyways, they have GTO is about when instead of having to hook up this what's called a remote turn on, it looks like that's fucking got power. That's sick. That allows it to turn on when it senses a signal here. And then we've got high pass crossover, and then you see the gain. The gain is that dial. So what I'm going to do is, the way you tune an audio control amp is it has a green light when you do good. So you're going to take your little screwdriver, and as you're playing music and you do a couple of tests where you turn the sound all the way down and then you turn the sound all the way up, but you don't actually hook up the speakers, you're just testing the signal going into it because you don't want to blow your speakers. And so you do a couple of tests and you tune this until this green light turns green, and it'll have a red light or a green light. Those are the 2 lights right there, not that one. Wait, maximized. Yeah, it is that one. So maximized means you have tuned it properly. And so out of that crossover that I've tuned, the crossover is putting out, we're just throwing out these numbers, 8.5 volts. And now I go into this, so I'm going to tune this to its 8.5 or 9.5 volts, whatever it is at when it reaches this stage. If it's higher than 4 volts, what I'm doing is I'm feeding the information of the audio sound, but much more data. So an amplifier takes a small in and turns it into a big out. Well, if you put a lot more in, what that's going to translate to is, first off, I'm not going to have to turn up my volume on the amps or the output gain nearly as much at all. So the amps are going to work on less power and put out more sound with more data. So this will translate to, instead of having to turn up the gains on my system to 75%, which is the industry standard, my gains are going to be at 25%. But they're going to be putting out more sound with less distortion and more data in that sound for that same audio stream. So what I'm banking on is maximizing the boost that goes into my audio system by having as many audio control components in that system as possible. And then the final nail on that coffin is the Epicenter, which replaces sound lost in the recording process. So for my one 11-inch speaker and all those door speakers, you're just going to experience a much fuller, richer, more data in the audio sound wave. And then the external speakers are going to benefit from that as well, because they're going to be doing a hardwire instead of Bluetooth, where you do lose some of the sound in Bluetooth. You don't really notice it with these speakers on Bluetooth mode. They're fucking loud. And so I'm going to run a wired signal into the inputs, because they have the ability to pair two of them exactly together, so there's no lag, either via Bluetooth or via wire. I run a wire into one and then an auxiliary out to another. It's called a pass-through. So they're going to be wired most of the time, unless I'm in a sound situation where it's not prudent, in which case I'll be able to do the same thing, but now that they're going to be Bluetooth, well, that is going to change things a little bit. I haven't exactly figured that out yet, because I've been planning on having these wired the whole time. But there is a way to do it with a Bluetooth mixer. Maybe I need that down the road. Once I have everything installed, I'll know. So anyways, that is kind of your verbal education. I hope I didn't confuse it anymore about the Epicenter. But the plan for this system is, in any system especially, having anything audio controlling your system gives you more while consuming less. It takes less power with audio control amps to put out more sound if you feed them a higher input voltage. So that's it. It's a long fucking video.